education. You did go into the Department of Education.
I did.
So you understand the value of educating our young people. Do you feel that the education system has improved and is creating almost like the breeding ground for young people who are able to bring themselves, to whatever space they are presented with? And do you feel that there's something more we can do? Because we have, 10,000 Black interns and the Amos bursary. Do you feel that those organizations, are doing most of the legwork? Or do you feel that, education as a whole in this country is also supporting the great work that those organizations do?
Yeah, great set of questions. I spent 2 years at the Department for Education. I came from the Ministry of Justice, at the time, 85,000 people, into an organisation of 6,000 people.
Right.
So very, very different in size, very different. Enter stage left Department for Education, picking up a role around cultural transformation, so literally like a pig in muck, setting about my work, able to send a single email to all staff, a very progressive permanent secretary, that's equivalent of CEO at the time, Jonathan Slater, who welcomed an opportunity to do work that would be more transparent, that would do work that was therefore more accessible to all staff. We focused our attention on delivering racial equity, and we went knocking at the door of the Secretary of State to answer the question, the call for a mandatory inclusion of Black history in the national curriculum. We have the Holocaust in the national curriculum, quite rightly.
Yes.
But we don't have the history of Black people. And whether you want to start at African enslavement or you want to go before that period to give people an appreciation that it didn't start with that.
Yes.
There was something before. And that, that those who built vessels and stole human beings from Africa and took them elsewhere, they didn't steal slaves, they stole professors and doctors and technicians and actors and singers and performers and artists and sports. That's what they stole.
Yes.
And they stole them.
Yeah.
And they stole them because they could.
Yes.
Now, we wanted that in the national curriculum. And I say wanted because if you're up to speed with what's happened in education, and I'm not denying some of the improvements that have been made, I don't want to skip past that. But the reality is that there is so much more to do.
Yes.
My disclaimer is out there. Only 2 years spent, but I worked hard. I worked at the heart of what needed doing as a priority to deliver on racial equality. And I worked with a progressive permanent secretary, the head of the admin office. But what we came across was a very obstructing and a very denying force in the Secretary of State at the time. Gavin Williamson is his name, no longer there of course, and moved on, and in part because of his apparent stubbornness to be more progressive and to be more welcoming of modern Britain and diverse Britain and multicultural Britain.
Yes.
To actually give an opportunity to our young. So when we talk about some of the initiatives that are in the air, whether it's the Amos Bursary itself, whether it's the Reach Society doing the work it does to connect with young people and to offer them a runway to be their very best. What I acknowledge is that they're very often plugging a gap that should be provided by the education system, without doubt.
Yes.
We all pay into that system. The maths are there for us to follow through if we want to do that.
Yeah.
And there is more that system should be doing for our young people. I won't go as far as saying it's letting young people down, because we have amazing stars in those communities. We have amazing young talented people, colourful, wonderful, vibrant people who are making sense of it.
Yes.
And so they're not let down because they're making sense of it. But there are too many of our young people that are forgotten, that are left behind, that are not given an opportunity to learn the truth of our past.
Yes.
Which is so important in terms of trajectory to the future. I think it was Marcus Messiah Garvey that said, a people without a knowledge of their past or history is like a tree without roots.
Very powerful.
And it's so powerful. And if we really follow that through and begin to understand the importance of teaching truth to our young people so that they can take that with them on their journey, then the education system has a number of corners to turn.
I love that. And I could probably go on for ages about the education system. You know, there's something that you said, making sense of you know, whatever institution you fall into, and I had to make sense of a lot of my journey in terms of education. By the time I got to university, I went to a Russell Group uni. I went to Nottingham University, and I had to almost re-educate myself because I didn't have a lot of these organisations that are around at the moment. You know, I had a good support network, but I think a lot of my journey had to be quite internal. And I think in my second year of university, I went back to Uganda for about 6 weeks, where my uncle spent a lot of time with me teaching me about where I came from. And that's where a lot of, you know, my strength and my power came from, because I had come to this country, I joined a system that my parents had no idea about. And the education system at the time was completely different to, you know, what is being taught at the moment. So you can only imagine, I couldn't really find my sense of self in the education system. As great as, you know, university was, I still had to find myself. And it's that history part that I almost wish, you know, someone had told me way before I got to university, because by then you're almost like in the thick of it.
Absolutely. You know, the die has been cast, hasn't it?
Yes.
And again, we can make the comparison, and we can extrapolate across the different, you said, you know, whichever organisation you find yourself in, but we've kind of focused our attention just now on education, and quite rightly. But if you were to switch and look at policing, or look at justice, or look at housing, or look at health, those same challenges are there. Those same challenges, going right back to what we said at the beginning about cultural education, about what I talk about, cultural intelligence. I can remember a time when that was the only quotient in town.
Yes.
We hired, we fired based on IQ.
Yes.
Oh, we had different tools and tests for it, but in essence, we were hiring and firing on IQ.
Yes.
And it was the wisdom of the day. It was the understood gauge by which we decided whether someone was good enough for the job or not. Then, later on, we saw, hang on a minute, it's not all about brain power.
Yes.
It's also about what the heart says. And if I can't explain how I feel about something, by now we've created these, you know, almost brains on sticks.
Yeah.
You know, these people who, they know what to do and they're going to get it done, but there's a whole lot of people are sick through stress because they were almost bullied into doing the work.
It's true.
And so within my career, I saw that about turn. It's not all about what you do. It's also about how you do it.
Yes.
There's no point in getting the work done if you're going to cause people to be off work with stress.
Yes.
And so dealing with all of that was the arrival of, Daniel Goleman talks about it in his book, Emotional Intelligence. Fantastic addition to the quotient arena.
Yes.
For me, the bit that completes the set, the bit that we really need to now take on and up, is that cultural intelligence.
Yes.
Because it's great that we've got the brain power. It's great that we know what the heart says. That's all about me in a way. But what about you?
Yeah.
What about Uganda?
Yeah.
What about what your parents would have lived through and gone through? What about the Caribbean and the West Indies? What about parts of Europe? What about the Americas? What can we know about each other's culture and cultures of organisations that allows us to make wiser decisions in how we provide for that?
Yes.
That, for me, is the secret sauce.
Yeah, I love that.
That's the missing piece.
That's the key.
We're ready.
Yeah.
It's the key to inclusion.
I love that. Head, heart, whilst holding each other's hands.
That's right. That's it. That's it.
I love that. So, if inclusion, well, we can include diversity and equity too, but if they could be described or imagined as a colour, food, a sound, what would that be for you?
Oh, wow. Wow. Words that are popping into my mind are words like myriad, mosaic, collage.
Yes.
You know, these words that kind of, what I hope they convey is this kind of collection, multiple layered, variety of, diversity of difference.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know, it's like a rose in a poppy field, but still at home and giving us this wonderful picture. Individuals able and wanting to bring as much of their self that they want to bring into the workplace, and that being welcomed and encouraged and promoted. And I don't just mean by title or badge or pits on the shoulder. I mean promoted by having access to, by being a part of. You know, if I could go back to the civil service and talk to either my younger self or indeed my colleagues who are there now and running the show, you know, I'd want to talk to them about, when you start a meeting, ask yourself the question, have I got the right people in the room?
Yes.
You know, ask yourself the question, if we're forming policy to meet the needs of citizens and society, shouldn't we have some of those people in the room?
Absolutely.
You know, too many meetings are full of civil servants who are self-serving. They're not bad people, they're not wicked people, but they're narrow thinking.
Yeah.
There's almost a myopia that overtakes because it's all about getting through the performance of that meeting and meeting an objective that you've agreed yourselves what you're trying to do.
Yes.
Well, where is the voice from elsewhere? Where is the difference? You know, who was in the room when they came up with Windrush as a policy?
Very, very good point.
I asked myself this. I kind of know the answer.
Yeah.
There wasn't anybody that looked like you, Rachel, in that room. There wasn't anybody that looked like me in that room.
Yeah.
And not that it's all about looks. I get it. You know, it's not all about hue or pigmentation or melanin.
I
Come to
love
that. But it is about cultural intelligence.
Yes.
And we need to pay attention to the gap. Not the gap on the underground. We have to mind that all the time. But the empathy gap.
Yes.
Can I empathise with you? Have I listened to you well enough to hear what you're saying?
Yeah.
You know, post George Floyd, lots of conversations, even conversations that were brave enough to invite and welcome the black voices within the organisation. Lots of listening going on, but not much hearing.
Very true.
And a lot of senior leaders, they conflate those two words.
Yeah.
They think listening is hearing. And they're ready to get to grips with what needs to be done, almost asking the very object, the very subject of their inquiry to leave the room.
Yes.
That's not, you don't tell people who are impacted by what you're trying to do to leave the space.
Yeah.
They stay in the space.
Yeah.
They stay in the space.
Yeah.
Because if we're ever going to get better at policing all of our community, if we're ever going to get better at dispelling this culture of denial, it will take those voices to provide an essential part of the best way forward, an essential part of the solution. I love what there's a track in Hamilton, the musical. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Well, you know that track, the track that says, get me in the room where it happens. Get me in the room where those click boom.
Yes. That was very powerful.
Oh,
the whole scene was powerful.
Oh, I was on the edge of my seat the whole thing.
Yeah.
I got to the intermission, my bum was sore because I realised, no, seriously, this is
You
true.
hadn't moved the whole time.
I was at the Victoria Palace watching it, and